Welcome to Wharton Moneyball, our sports show where we talk about statistics and everything that's happened this week. We have in the remote locations Shane Jensen, and soon we'll be joined by Cade Massey, Professor Adi Wyner of the Department of Statistics and Data Science, as is Shane. And Cade, of course, is in a different department, OID, Operation Information Decisions. We never get the full thing listed out. And we're joined by Dean Oliver, which is always exciting. He's a regular guest on our show. Dean is a sports analyst at ESPN right now, and he's gone through lots of iterations of different work for different teams and has written several fantastic books on basketball, and is definitely our go-to guy for all things basketball, which is now our transition because baseball season is over. We're sad about that. I don't know, Dean, did you catch any baseball, or are you all in on basketball?
I am pretty much all in on basketball. I knew what was going on in baseball, but I could watch the highlights. I couldn't really take the time to watch the games.
Yeah, well, you're in Hawaii, so you were sort of out of the time zone. But
No, so first of all, I'm not in Hawaii
you're
anymore.
not in Hawaii anymore.
Second
Okay.
of all, Hawaii is like one of the greatest places to watch sports because they end at a reasonable time. You can actually watch the whole thing. They're not ending it at 3 in the morning. Like, wasn't there one? Yeah, there was a game that ended.
There was an 18-inning game. I didn't actually stay up for that. I would have, of course, it involved a team that I was rooting for, but I did stay up till the nearly 1 o'clock ending of the series, which was a fantastic game. But we don't have to talk about it with you. You didn't watch it. That's not your thing. We're talking about basketball, so we're excited for you to tell us about all kinds of things basketball. Do you have a quick summary of what we should be thinking about in the opening couple weeks of the season?
I think Victor Wembanyama is a very, very frightening player at this point. He is so big and he is quick, and I think he can beat himself, but it's not clear exactly what you do to take him away. Uh,
Wembanyama, this is his third season now in this, or
yeah, it's his third season, and I think one of the things his last season was injury shortened,
did we just
and I
lose?
think that's one thing you always worry about with the big guys.
So just tell me a little bit about, how long does it take for a first round draft pick, basically a number one pick, to turn into something extremely good? Is that something you expect in the right away, second year, third year? And how is he tracking roughly versus that?
It takes a little bit longer when they're young, like Wembanyama, like most of the recent ones have been, of course, because they may be talented and everything, but when they're coming in and you're only 19 and you're going on this growth curve where you're playing high school kids and you could just dominate them. You go to college, and even if you're playing some of the best competition, they are several inches shorter, several inches, maybe a foot. They're not as wide, as long, and so the adjustment, you're definitely going to have an adjustment period of at least 2 years. And I think that's what we're seeing with Wembanyama right now. Is we're seeing him offensive growth still in process. His defensive impact, it's hard to find a comparison for him because he is just so big, so mobile, so able to just intimidate everything. His block rate, I think I looked at it. He's basically blocking 10% of all 2 point shots.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and Akeem Olajuwon, I think, was like at 7 or 8 peak. And you're not, yeah, because what he's doing is crazy, especially when you couple it with all the other things that he's doing.
Which are what exactly?
So he can handle the ball. He can bring the ball up court. There was a highlight play where he blocked someone at the rim, got the defensive rebound, and then brought it back up court, and made a shot. And just all in. I think it was like 3 strides after we got the defensive board too. He's just you don't know exactly what to do. He's got some of the elements of Giannis in the incredibly long stride and ball handling. Not quite as shifty as Giannis is yet, but Giannis wasn't that way initially. So he doesn't have his 3 point shot fully dialed in yet, but you kind of wonder, how are you going to defend that, especially we can go by you on the dribble at the same time. I think he's got John Wooden said that quickness was more important than height. I don't know if I ever believed that, but people always put those two, 1 and 2, in terms of kind of basic physical skills, and he's got both of them. It's just scary to think about.
Yeah, I
Shane?
mean, it kinda sounds like he's kind of a nightmare matchup right now, and could be that teams haven't. I don't know if you've seen yet in kind of the matchups he's faced, whether there is, like, is somehow like, whether there's gonna be strategies that come out for dealing with his kind of physical dominance and his physical skill set. Whether you can look back in history for any kind of strategy, or whether he's kind of a one and one and they're just gonna have to, you know, uh, learn on the fly. I don't know if you mentioned some historical precedent already for him. Do you think there is kind of, you know, somewhere in basketball history we can look back and sort of see, like, how do you kind of strategize against somebody with this kind of physical skill?
I think teams are going to end up using trial and error more than they are going to use history. I think people try to think back to things that are kind of close, but he's unique. He is as much as people called, say, Kristaps Porzingis the unicorn at some point, and KP he's tall and he can shoot, and he's got a great defensive presence. You add another couple inches to him, and you add uh, quicker feet and better ball handling, then you've got Wembanyama. So, like, what are you going to learn from the comparison to KP? Um, Probably not anywhere near as much as you need to.
So, I mean, what do you think this means for the Spurs? Are they going to just dominate? What's it gonna how does that set out in terms
I think coming into this season, most projections were that they were going to be about 500.
500? Okay.
Yeah, and they started off undefeated. They now have a loss. They look pretty bad actually in their loss to Phoenix recently. What we saw was just so dominant. Mm, I'm betting that the over on the win total is now quite a bit higher than your
Well,
500.
that's actually an interesting question because usually, I mean, we don't have Cade here right now. He would start talking about overreaction and that what can you say after 6 games that you should be shrunk pretty heavily towards your preseason
Yep.
forecast.
Yep.
Something I think in what you're observing in Wembanyama seems to be so radically different, almost as if the preseason just got it wrong and we just need to toss it and replace it. Is that
Plus, because of his injury, you kinda had, I guess, more additional kind of prior uncertainty in what, in that kind of preseason.
There's a few factors that end up relevant here. Is yeah, you kind of forget what they were um, last year, and they were not particularly good. He got hurt at the end of the season. Stephon Castle won Rookie of the Year, but he wasn't great. He was a rookie himself.
Mhm.
He is definitely better now. They drafted Dylan Harper, who started off the year quite good. He just got hurt though now too, so they could have running into the injury bug, and Harper's going to be out for a while. But they have a number of good pieces, and as long as I think Wembanyama, one of the things you notice is if you look at the individual numbers for a lot of the players for the Spurs, how much better they get when he is on the floor. Uh, it's like this whole division of credit. How much credit do you give Wembanyama for making it easier for the other guys to actually defend versus
So
just
is he just attracting attention, this so-called gravity, or is he
well,
making it just
it's funny what
yeah.
you call it gravity. What I would say is the most relevant aspect of him is his anti-gravity. In some, he has defensive anti-gravity. No one wants to get close to this guy
Uh-huh.
because he's so long and so big. If we have this gravity metric on the offensive side for how much people stay with Steph, for instance, when he's out at 30 feet. On the defensive side, you want to almost characterize as anti-gravity because no one wants to go near this guy. And what that does is it makes it a lot easier to put pressure on a ball handler, for instance, because you don't have help responsive. You don't have to help as much. If you don't have to help in the middle because you've got this guy who covers so much space, you can guard your man a lot better.
Right, so you don't have that strange sort of game theoretic problem where someone's driving down the middle, you have one person there blocking him, but that's not enough for an ordinary human being to block, and then so that someone else comes help, leaving someone in the corner wide open, pop it in, and then they get the shot. With Wembanyama, you're saying he doesn't need help, you can keep everybody guarded, and that's just a huge offensive just crush.
That
Yeah,
yeah. I love the fact that you say game theory aspect of it too, because yes, it does. It changes the dynamic of that game theory so
Or I mean,
much.
another perspective. I wasn't really thinking game theory. I was kind of thinking, it kind of fundamentally points to like a massive endeavor of offensive strategy is to create space in the offensive zone, and he inherently is a space restricting. Is probably the most powerful space restricting force you could have as a in the from the defensive side. So it's kind of he's really kind of optimally antithetical to one of the main goals of offensive possession.
Right. So I guess that means that so most of the space comes on the outside, right? That's where volume
Mhm.
grows or space grows, much rapidly rather than inside. But what he does is he takes away that inside shot, forcing everyone back and make it much more difficult to shoot from three. Is that what's actually happening?
He's allowing all his perimeter teammates to take up the space out on the perimeter because they don't need to come in and help him. He goes, puts his arms out, and he's got pretty much the
Control.
entire field covered.
So is there any particular offense that would be more successful against a team with Wembanyama with the Spurs? Or is it they're all kind of
You think
suck?
of the elite Golden State where they're just launching threes from the distance and still being successful? I don't know. This is kind of what I was trying to get at with the previous matchup question, whether there is sort of like some combination that at least matches up as well as you can against somebody like women.
I don't think we know particularly well yet. I think one of the ways you can create a little bit of space on the perimeter is when you have defensive guards and stuff that are putting pressure is you can basically a screen and roll. And then you get to about the mid range before Wembanyama's impact is actually all that big. And you take some of those shots. Now, I didn't watch the Phoenix game in entirety the other night. I actually caught it after they were well ahead. Um, but Devin Booker is one of those guys, and Phoenix has him. He definitely is willing to put the ball on the floor and take the mid range, and not only willing to, he can make them. And so sometimes you almost have to go counter rule of thumb analytics wise to beat these people who are just so good at doing what analytics says.
So let me ask a question specific to like an analyst. So what does an analyst do like during the week to help prepare their team to face a particular upcoming opponent? Do they try to invent things to? I mean, how does that work? And I'm speaking almost because we have all these people who have these jobs now. I'm curious, what do they do?
When you're working for a team in the regular season, it's very tough because first of all, you can sit there and say we're preparing for when Wembanyama like this coming Saturday or something. Between Tuesday and Saturday, you may have two other games,
Mhm.
and so you can't really put in a whole lot. And especially early in the season, like now, is you're trying to perfect who you are rather than trying to adapt too much to him. Now, that being said, what teams will probably do if you do have a day off or 2 days off before you face him is you will watch more tape and then you will put in like, all right, guys, this is what we're thinking of doing. And it will be a combination of what an analyst and coaches are kind of thinking of doing. These statistical analysts, they're trying to look for data for what has particularly worked. And so they may have a history. You may go back and look at all the games where Wembanyama's defensive numbers were not very good and the opponent actually burned them. The coaches would probably be looking back at that Phoenix game and what did Phoenix do? And then you're going to try to mesh those numbers that what you have over the first 3 years, 2+ years of Wemby's career with what they've seen in the tape. And then you come up with suggestions. And you may still fail, but you try a number of things over the course of the year, and hopefully you find something. And
So before we change topics, because I want to talk about the rookie class, quick over under on Spurs wins over the season. What do you got?
50,
They're at 50.
50.
So that's substantially better than 41 or whatever they were
Yeah. Yeah.
preseason. But not
43
you don't expect them to dominate. I have no insight, so I can't disagree. All right, while we're on basketball over unders, our Sixers. What do you think of them?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Dean, if we
'Cause-
should we get excited? I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, if
people
Eric
are
was here,
here.
I bet you if Eric was here, he would not be excited.
Yeah.
I am excited on the one hand in that I think like it's actually good to see Philly win without Embiid playing a significant role. Uh,
Hmm.
when you've got um, Tyrese Maxey, frankly, playing so much better than we've seen him play, and he was good before. The fact that someone else behind Embiid can carry the team, I think, is kind of what they need. Um, and I always worried about Embiid being kind of the leader on that team. I think Maxey can probably be the more democratic leader. I mean, make everybody happy. Whereas it can be tough when you just have someone like Embiid who can score. So I think this is a nice change. I am a little worried that maybe Maxey's playing is a bit over his head, but I do think there's a real improvement, just not quite as good as what we've seen.
Well,
And
that's
Edgecombe is also like, obviously, you get a nice cheap rookie like him, that's a good sign. And they
so.
got Jared McCain coming back.
It's actually very interesting because Wembanyama is doing exactly what we projected, right? We projected him to be this good in his third year, so we don't doubt his success.
Yes.
But I think with Maxey, we don't expect it. So I think regression of the mean is probably in the cards, which means that that's as fans. My fancy way of saying Sixers fans don't get too excited.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the rookie class. We have, of course, the lead rookie, Cooper Flagg, and others. Tell us what you think about how they're faring out.
So one of the things that we did at ESPN is we put together kind of a preview of the year, and Dallas didn't project particularly well, and part of it was that Kyrie is not coming back until January or so like that. Anthony Davis is good, but he's not going to carry you. And then yeah, you have a bunch of guys who are what my old GM used to say, just guys. It's not that they're bad; they're guys. They help you a little bit. They're better than replacement level. Um, and then we kind of did a simulation. How good would they be if Cooper Flagg was as good as the hype? Basically one of the best rookies that we've seen in the last 10 to 20 years. Then they're pretty good. They end up being like a top 4 to top 6 seed in the West, which is not easy to do. Now, that being said, Cooper Flagg has not been that guy. So far, he has not been. He has been kind of a typical rookie, struggling with a lot of things. One of the things that we've seen with him is that he actually a very key breakdown, a key split in how well he plays versus when he's playing well versus poorly is whether they actually have a point guard on the floor. If they have D'Angelo Russell on the floor, they have Brandon Williams on the floor, Cooper Flagg is actually kind of close to what we were simulating, what he could be as a rookie. But he's played more than half his possessions, I believe, without those guys, and he has been awful.
Oh,
He,
genuinely awful. Wow.
yeah, he's without those guys, he's shooting 31%, um, more turnovers in less time than when he's playing with those guys. So it's he needs someone to kind of carry the offense. People talked in the preseason. There was one highlight play where he brought the ball all the way up the floor, backed down a really good defender and made it look easy. And I think that kind of stuck with people. Oh, he can be our 6'10" point guard. And he's not really been able to.
Well, the thing is, we just talked about this with Wembanyama. Rookies generally are not. Do they ever live up to their hype? I mean, think about it. Historically, do the great players of today, did they have good rookie seasons? I mean, maybe that's not the right, that's really not that's a post hoc. I'm cheating, right? You look at the great players now, right? But I mean, go look forward looking and backwards looking. So start with forward looking. How many of our really excited first picks turn into something? Maybe I'm jaded because of Philly. They never do, right? But how often do they hit their max and then go backwards and say, look at the great players of today? Were they rookie sensations? Usually not.
So there are two players that always come to mind when we talk about rookies. One is Chris Paul, because I remember doing an analysis of him when he was in college. And one of the ways I looked at it is I wanted to see how much he dropped off really when he played against good competition when he was in college, to make some sort of projection of, okay, now you're going to be playing really good competition. And he really didn't drop off. And so he ended up having a very good rookie season. He was obviously not an NBA all first teamer or anything, but he was very good. But probably the best rookie that I know of, the best rookie performance was by a guy we all know was a second round pick, but is the best player in basketball. Jokic.
Yeah.
Jokic was outstanding as a rookie, but people just didn't pay attention to him because he was still slow. He had all those things that people remembered, like like what you were talking about, their priors and stuff. People's priors on him was that he's a second round pick, and so people didn't kind of recognize that he was doing all the things he was. His numbers legitimately were all NBA as a rookie, and so it's it's not necessarily a number one pick. Obviously, LeBron lived up to it. LeBron had a great rookie year. He was very good. It wasn't all NBA level, but it was good. You have the failures. You have guys who fail for different reasons, like Zion Williamson, who fails because of injuries.
Right. Cade, good to have you.
Glad to be here. More technology challenges. I'm trying not to get fired. Y'all should just fire me. 11 years in, still having technology challenges. Dean, you said this thing about your analysis of Chris Paul splitting his college performance as a function of the quality of the opponent. And I'm curious how often we do that in basketball. Is that a common way to look at players? And is it revealing? Do we often see people who don't degrade as you go? I would think that'd be a great analysis, and yet I haven't heard of it.
Most of the time, you don't get a lot of significance with it. No. So back then, of course, players played usually more than 1 year, which kind of limits your statistical significance. So Chris Paul played 2, which gave you more of a chance. And the fact that like, whoa, okay, it's not usual to see this. So you do try. I do look for this. Whether there are some players who go off a cliff. They basically, if they start playing the really good teams, they play much worse. But there's a number of those that you just don't have enough statistical significance to buy it. When you're talking about prospects who are coming in, who are joining the NBA after 1 year, so it gets tough to use that. It's an indicator if you put it with other things, but it's not as strong as you would like.
All right. Well, let's hear about the Lakers. They have this all-star trio for real. Are we looking at something interesting over there?
Yeah, I think we are. I think one of the things that was in the last book, Basketball Beyond Paper, is it was almost a footnote about Austin Reeves. And that was when he was a rookie, I believe. There are not very many players who are what I was calling 4-level scorers. Basically, they can finish at the rim, they can finish in the paint away from the rim, they can make mid-range shots, and they can make threes. And Austin Reeves was one of those.
Dean, real quickly, can you clarify the distinction between finishing in the paint and mid-range shots?
So mid-range, what I'm calling mid-range here is everything outside the paint, but inside of the three-point shot. And then within the paint, there's 2 different shots. There's at the rim, and then there's like floaters, like 15 foot just inside the foul line. Yeah. And so Austin Reeves has not necessarily fully duplicated what he did as a rookie, but he's been very close. And these players who actually can shoot from all these distances well and actually create, that's the other thing that's about this trio in LA, is that they all not only can shoot, but they can create for other people. And that ability, that combination of abilities makes it very difficult for a team for a defense to really deal with that.
So ultimately, you're thinking the Lakers are very good.
Some of my skepticism actually is laying with LeBron now.
LeBron. Well, LeBron is like 100 years old, right? I mean,
that's a big part of the reason is what we saw with LeBron last year is we definitely saw a decline. We've seen him coming down, and his mountain was so high. His peak was so incredibly high. He's come down quite a lot, and I'm wondering whether he's gonna mentally be able to deal with his body not doing all it could before?
Well, it's interesting. So Eric isn't here, but this is what he would say. He would say that LeBron can't be LeBron of yesteryear all the time, but he can put it on when he really needs to. That would be my question for you. Can he even still do that?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean,
Adi, great job channeling Eric. That's really good.
I know. I think I got all of our specialties down.
Yeah, we can chat GPT each other pretty decently, I think, at this point. One other question while we're in the West, I got to ask about Durant and Houston.
one of my favorite teams. Yeah, I really like watching those guys. I really like them in part because Alperen Şengün was kind of under the radar and great passer. Another guy who, like Jokic, has this ability to see the floor. He's not anyone's really in Jokic's category, but I think Durant said something about loving to play with Şengün because Şengün sees all the options so quickly. And I did an analysis. This is a few days old at this point, but basically Durant is dominant with Şengün on the floor and not very good with Şengün off the floor. I expect that to regress a little bit to the norm, but it was significant enough that I expect it to persist, just not to that same magnitude. And Şengün, just kind of look at it. Şengün knows how to make the right reads. He puts so much pressure on every defender to keep track of their guy. So it was fun last night. Like Şengün was called on to go to basically decide what play they were going to run and go one-on-one with Durant off the ball last night to win the game, basically.
Wow. So let's Cade, you want to?
I want to follow up. This is probably where you want to go, Adi. I'm curious, though, because I know Dean has been interested in the last year, especially his whole life, but especially in the last year on this kind of partialing credit on the NBA court. And this is a question that's of deep interest to us across sports, of course, and I think even beyond sports, because so much of production in groups is interdependent, and so it's hard to figure out who's dragging the group down or who's elevating the group. So to what extent have you made progress on this? And you could even take Şengün as an example in Houston. How is it you're figuring out how much credit to give him, given that it often happens through other players? It shows up through other players.
I mean, fundamentally, this question of how much credit do you give, and this is one of the demonstrations I actually do when I'm doing division of credit, is basically the pass and the catch. That is a fundamentally team exercise, right? Like those two people, their success is based upon whether you toss it well and you catch it well. You complete both of those things. And so each of those things has a difficulty, but say if you throw it a little bit off target, it makes the catch harder. So people implicitly want to give a little bit more credit to the person who caught it if it's a bit off target. But if they miss it, they get less blame, right? If it's off target, they may have still had a chance. And that's giving you an idea for what are the parameters that you can use to kind of divide that credit. How hard were the initial events? And so if we extend it more, when you have a player who's moving, the catcher is moving, that makes the thrower's job a little bit harder, right? Because they have to time it, they have to lead the player and stuff like that. So all of these, there are these factors that make each thing harder. So to the degree that I can, which is far less than I just talked about, you put that into basketball and you identify the passes and how difficult were some of the passes that had to be made, how difficult were the corresponding shots. It's a lot easier to make a shot at the rim than to make a 3-point shot.
Right.
And it's correspondingly, it's difficult to make the pass to someone at the rim because the defense is usually taking care of that first.
Right. So just to point out, Dean came to Moneyball Academy over the summer, and we did a live demo with passing basketball, which illuminates those differences. My question is, I imagine you can relatively easily do that by watching. You can, if you're good at it, you can score a pass and a catch. Is it technology and the analysis of the data good enough to do that automatically yet, or is that something that is still being worked on?
I believe the technology is pretty good to do a lot of this now. The matter of time for me to kind of dive in and get everything, all the details. I've done some of it before, but not at the full scope. So you take approximations from what you have at the time for now.
Mhm.
But yeah, the data for passes, for instance, it tells you whether you kicked it out to someone who made a three, but you passed it at their ankles and they had to really get down and get it before. So your pass wasn't as good in order to get, uh, but they still made the shot.
Wait, so
Well,
the tracking data has that annotated, or you have to build that yourself with XYZ
oh
coordinates?
no, the tracking data has the passes, has the height of the passes when it reaches players, all of that kind of thing. Yes, it is there.
I see. So it's actually annotated data. It's not just XYZ time. You deal with it. It's already been processed.
All of the stuff that I've had to work with is like that. I don't want to deal with the XYZ time.
Yes, I know that. That is a grueling endeavor, and it eats up analysts. I mean, I imagine that's what analysts are doing on a day-to-day basis, dealing with this monstrosity of a data set.
So for the most part, one company, what's now called Genius IQ, I believe, does a lot of that processing. The NBA itself internally is doing a lot of its own processing with that as well.
Okay.
So you have two kind of parties that are doing some of the same things, some things that are a little bit different. But yeah, they are doing a lot of that annotation, which is
Well,
very
we at Wharton, and I imagine universities are all over, are anxiously hoping that the NBA mimics the NFL in their big datable competition, in which it releases a lot of this great data to the public, and inspires us to want to work on it. So hopefully that'll happen. Um, I know the MLB has tons of data, but they don't release the good stuff to the public. Much of it already is good. In fairness, MLB was way out in front of all the other leagues in terms of releasing high quality, advanced data. All right. So maybe one final question we can take before we wrap up our first segment. Um, Analytics has changed, basketball a lot. We all talk about that. What's the frontier? At least let's just pick one quick domain, like player acquisition. What's the role of analytics in that?
on player acquisition. The good thing about working in management is you have a lot of time to deal with player acquisition. How much you have to pay, how good are they going, how good are they now, how good are they going to be in the future, and to some degree, you can look at some of this question for: are they going to fit with our guys? Are our guys going to make them better, or are our guys potentially going to make them worse? That definitely happens. And so you definitely have time to go into all of this when you are evaluating prospects from college or trade prospects, all of that. And the metrics for a lot of these things definitely exist in my world. Like, you look at these components, so things like rebounding, shooting, passing, um, getting to the foul line, putting the ball on the floor, and being able to make a decision whether to pass or shoot. Those kind of things. We have metrics for a lot of this stuff, and ideally, I haven't done this. Ideally, you make some sort of simulator where you put all your players together and you determine whether they can complement each other, but we aren't quite there yet. Maybe
Is
some team is, but
Yeah, I was going to ask: is anybody of the 30 NBA teams, do we have anybody doing that advanced work?
you know, I wouldn't doubt that there's some far-reaching soul in one of these teams doing something like that, but has their stuff actually made a difference in decision making? I'm doubting it at this
That's a tough problem. I will say that we had a team of students here in our sports analytics lab led by Ryan Brill, who's now working for the Utah Jazz.
point.
And they tried to build the way they kind of handled it was they create different clusters of offenses and defenses. And then they imagined you adding a player based on that player type into a particular cluster. And so essentially they had different regression coefficients, um, which determined exactly by the combination. So that was a high level approach to solve sketching out a solution to that very complex problem.
Is it good enough to be trustworthy in making decisions? And
That's really the key issue. And how to get past all the the upper level management who can they.
We need to make Adi a GM and to test this thing out.
Yeah, right.
you're gonna go take over for Danny Age there in Utah, Adi?
Not taking a. If I do any sport, it isn't basketball. But unfortunately,
We'll only need to watch him. We'll only need to watch him for 20 years before we can draw a conclusion.
Exactly, 20 years. Anyway, Dean, thank you once again for joining us on Wharton Moneyball. It's been a pleasure to have you. Dean is, of course, we're analyst for ESPN. He's also the author, I didn't mention this, of Basketball on Paper and the new version, Basketball Beyond Paper, the really analytics Bible to the analysis of basketball. So thank you, Dean, and we'll look forward to you joining us again in the future.
Thank you, guys. Good seeing you.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome back to the second half of this week's show. Cade Massey back on host duties with a supposedly functional laptop, joined by Adi Wyner. Thank you, Ad, for running the show first half. And Shane Jensen, the workhorse here. He's done so much research this week, carrying the load. Appreciate it. Eric Bradlow in absentia. Eric out doing Eric Bradlow things. Glad to be here on Tuesday afternoon, just off the line with Dean Oliver. Dean, one of our longest standing guests. He's an example of one of these people that we now have a thicker relationship with. Comes around school, does some things, teaches a little bit. I've had him out to a conference or two. It's been one of the fun things about doing the show for 11 years is that we have not just online relationships from our online interviews. We've got some other ones as well, and Dean is a good example. Good to get caught up a little bit on basketball, huh? I mean, here we wrap up baseball, and now we have a little more capacity, just a little extra capacity on top of football. Let's turn our eyes elsewhere. We're doing basketball now. We'll do hockey at some point. I can talk a little hockey this week. Why don't we do this, fellas? Open lines, of course. Lots going on. We still haven't debriefed the baseball season, wrapping Game 7 ridiculousness. So plenty to talk about. We could go for a while. Let's do a couple of rounds of what caught your eye. We've only got 3 of us, but let's see how many we can do. Fellas, around the world of sports in this hot fall season, what's caught your eye?
Oh, come on. Can I start?
Yeah.
I want to end. We have to end the baseball season with a little attention.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many dramatic things that happened in that series that deserve our attention and caught our eye. But as someone who's thought about this particular topic a lot, definitely what caught my eye was Yamamoto pitching basically nearly a complete game and coming back the next day and throwing 2+ innings.
3 wins in the series.
That's old fashioned. That's 147 back in the old day. And this is crazy, right? So that particular performance, and I wonder, not only was it actually amazing, but are we missing something about what a pitcher is capable of doing? That would be can we learn anything from this, or is this so one-off that we just can't learn anything analytically that maybe how we manage pitching staffs going forward? And that would be the open question for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this too. It's like because I think there's been a lot of articles written about this is the return of the elite pitcher in the playoff. I'm like, if you have an elite pitcher in the playoffs, the strength of that has never really gone away. It's just I think it's kind of idiosyncratic being able to do something like that. I mean, I think the last Madison Bumgarner, I guess, and a decade ago was the same thing. Like if you happen to get a guy who is just so shut down, he can give you like 20 innings of like 1 or 2 run ball. Yeah, just throw that guy out there as much, and I guess the other unprecedented thing is Yamamoto's ability / willingness to just like do it day after day on 0 rest or 1 day rest or 2 day rest or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we did that. Listen, I think that Arizona did that to the Yankees in 2001.
Yeah.
They had 2 superstar pitchers. They just kept using them.
Yeah, Randy Johnson, I think, is the last time before this year that we had a 3-win pitcher. That a pitcher got 3 wins in a World Series.
Right, and they also had Schilling at the same time. So you had Schilling and Johnson and Schilling, and like, what are you going to do? And that's how the playoffs kind of turned its way against the Yankees.
Yeah, those guys, I think, pitched about 80% of their innings.
Yes, and I'm still smarting, by the way. It's 25 years later, and I'm still upset about that 5th, 7th game loss against Rivera. Oh, God, don't start me off.
No, I mean, honestly, I'm so glad you're still upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we talk regularly about what is your worst sporting moment in your entire life, and that 7th game loss in the 9th inning was my loss. I'm still unable to sit in the room where I watched it at my friend's house because it gives me, PSD.
Well, think about the Jays' feelings for the next 25 years about this game.
Yeah.
I mean, just so
No,
close.
I mean, that was a
In
real
so many ways. I mean, just
inches
brutal.
away, and that's playoff. I mean, that's like what an amazing series in general. I do just kind of one more sort of observation on whether this is kind of an idiosyncratic thing or whatever. I thought it was kind of interesting that somebody did analysis of the last 20 World Series winners, and this year's Dodgers scored the least runs out of all the last 20 World Series winners. Last year's Dodgers scored like the second most runs out of all the last year's like
That's
20. Yeah,
crazy.
basically the same team, right? So it's like we'll remember this World Series because of Yamamoto and this shutdown pitching. Honestly, it's not like that. That I think is this World Series is narrative, but I would be hesitant to extrapolate it to be like, oh, that's going to be the Dodgers' strength next year, even necessarily.
Yeah, right. Well, speaking of like the arc of these things over time, my memory is that the Dodgers didn't start this season out particularly strong. We had high priors on them, but they were underperforming for the first half of the season. It's just such a long season. It seems obvious. Maybe this has to be something that's well known, but I'm just curious how much teams work on it. That when you peak matters dramatically. I mean, you don't really need to worry about how well you're performing in April, May, June, unless you're building toward performing in July, really August, September, October. It's really all about those last 3 months. Do teams do things with that in mind? They must, but what kinds of things could you do if that was your orientation? Because the Dodgers came in as the wild card. Now they had to get lucky to win these short wild card series, but it's not the first time we've seen it. It just seems with such a long season, it seems obvious that it kind of has to be terrifically backloaded if you can do such a thing strategically.
Well, the Dodgers were incredibly injury prone with their starting staff for the most of the season. Remember how they started with like 13 wins in a row or some ridiculous number, and we thought they were going to run away with 100 wins, 110 wins, and they didn't even come close to that. Injury makes a big difference, particularly the starting staff, and they have terrific starting staff. And they have key hitters. I mean, I just don't understand how those hitters who came out of nowhere, who were like awful for the last month of the season, had these ridiculous homers. But that's how it make it happen. I mean, it's extreme events make things happen. But I don't think they manage it that way. I don't
know. I mean, again, one of the narratives we would have maybe created about this last year is that certain organizations like they either through player acquisition or through development are more focused on kind of fundamental kind of like bang bang sort of stuff in baseball, which we all, post hoc always attribute wins and like World Series victories and defeats to. So, IKF not taking like a lead when Mookie would have taken a lead and all this type of stuff. Or last year, is all the kind of fielding errors, we talked about the fielding errors the Yankees made last year. We talk about the base running gaffes that the Blue Jays made this year. I feel like another kind of narrative one could make, I'm not sure how big it really is that, the Dodgers seem to kind of like, either through development or player acquisition, get guys that like do the kind of fundamentals well, don't screw up in the big moments, kind of like maintain their composure in those big sort of plays. But again, I made that story up just now, but it's kind of, it is a post hoc story where a couple of those bang playing plays go a little different. And, it's not a very robust story, I guess, or it's not necessarily, I'm not sure how empirical it is of a story beyond the ad hoc nature of how I'm describing it.
These things are so close. These series are so close. I mean, they're just knife edge. And the Dodgers made it through a couple of them, but nothing more knife edge than this one. That it has to be chance that separates it, and yet we're going to instantly turn it into these narratives.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when a very different narrative was readily available, but for a matter of inches on multiple occasions, then you ought to go pretty easy on the narrative, right? Okay, right. That's odds. What cut is eye? Shane Jensen, what cut your eye?
Well, okay, let's start talking narratives. I want to do a shout out. We already covered baseball, but I want to do a shout out in football. I want to do a shout out to Eric Eager and whatever he's doing down with the Carolina Panthers there.
Yeah.
They're at 5. They have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs right now.
Yes,
5-4.
Yes.
That's pretty. It's halfway point in the season, so it's not like we're looking at this after 2 games or something.
How about it?
Well,
How about it?
I texted him before the
Eric
show to
doesn't
congratulate him on his 5-4, and he responded. I said, "Terrific job." He goes, "Yep." That was it.
Humble as always.
you know, he doesn't travel to every game. Most front office folks don't travel to every game. And but I saw on the schedule when Sunday morning came around, I saw that they were going to be in Green Bay. I'm like, oh, Eager's going to be up there. And sure enough, he was there. He was on the sidelines for it. He texted. Did you see his tweet? He tweeted this picture of his phone with the the icon of your messages, how many text messages you had, and it said it's just 54, little red 54 up there, text messages right after the game ended. So people were blowing him up to give him love for that game up there in Wisconsin.
The only downside I can see is I'm sorry you had to endure those Packers throwbacks so close up. I mean, I think those might have challenged like Steelers throwbacks for ugliest kind of. It makes me happy we're not in the 1940s anymore in terms of football.
With a low point. Shane, I'm glad you're with me on these uniform analytics. We're trying to make a little more rigorous.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, analytics has gotten too into the meat of it. Like, let's get back to superficial stuff, right? Come on.
Come on. We gotta focus on some shallow stuff. Eye candy. Come on.
Yeah.
Candy.
Now, can we talk about the Carolina Panthers for a moment? Do they actually have a good quarterback? I don't think so. How are they doing this?
I mean, I think they've had a decent run. I think it's a lot of expectation. I mean, Rico Dowell, for example, I'm not sure. He was kind of somebody the Cowboys essentially discarded, and I mean, we can probably fill a whole show talking about Cowboys personnel moves and the questions behind them. But like,
oh my God.
this guy was like a throwaway essentially from the Cowboys, and he's running for 150 yards, whatever he's averaging right now, over 100 yards a game. I'm pretty sure. So I think they've found a couple diamonds in the rough, and I think, I have to actually look a little bit more closely at their schedule to sort of see who they've played as well. I do know that, I've been paying attention to the Pats, another interesting strength of schedule kind of team, but the Pats completely destroyed them when they played them a few weeks ago. But
yeah,
that's the only kind of first-hand observation I have beyond yesterday's game.
But it's an interesting idea of, we have no idea how much credit Eric should get for any of this. So we don't want to act like it's Eric's saying. He's like, he's like number 3 down there, and he's involved, but we don't know. It's a lot of factors, zillion factors. But what's true is we worry about analytics not having a seat at the table. And a lot of organizations have analysts, but the analysts don't influence decision-making. We can be pretty sure that at least there's some level of influence by analytics in the Carolina decision-making, just by who's over there and why they brought them in. And whenever you go at it as we know Eric goes at things, they're going to know players around the league in real fine detail. They're not going to be diamonds in the rough that other teams know that they don't have some indication on. And they're not going to get real enthusiastic about guys who aren't worth some enthusiasm. They're not going to miss a lot of guys by a lot. And I think you can't be quite that sure of most NFL organizations.
Yeah, and I think it would be kind of like where, again, it's Eric's been better a year. I think grading draft somebody with more sort of savvy and like domain knowledge than I would. You can do things like I think grading the last couple drafts is probably somewhat valuable, but of course, the real grade of those last couple drafts we'll see in actuality in like 2 or 3, 4 years, right? It's basically on an expectation now.
Undoubtedly, but I think we sometimes worry too much about the draft and not enough about the pro personnel scouting, the pro personnel side. And
speaking of pro personnel, I know it's Shane, but I'll stay with football. The Jets seem to have unloaded their superstar.
Fire sale. It's a fire sale today.
And what's the relative value of 2 first-round picks relative to a proven star cornerback? I don't know. Did that make sense or what?
I mean, I'm real skeptical. Those picks are you have to pay full ride for I don't know the details of the contract. Okay, so I haven't looked at Sauce Gardner's contracts, but you're generally paying full ride for someone who's all past their first contract. Where on the first contract, this is the deal: they're set in a way that in expectation there's positive value, and that's more true about first round picks than subsequent picks. So you're giving away in expectation a lot of value, whereas for a free agent, in expectation you're paying full ride. You're not getting value. Now, That's setting aside the impact they have on the rest of the team, if you believe that kind of thing. But lots of teams have made those trades expecting there to be these kinds of synergies that don't ever pan out. I think it's
And it's
interesting to see a team, the Colts, make this play. They're obviously playing with the Rams playbook from a few years ago, where it's like, we're not going to try to hoard picks. We're going to go all in right now. And it's a risky proposition.
It is. I mean, I guess the one thing kind of that you just didn't mention, Cade, that like is part of at least the calculus from the Colts perspective is, it's a win now move, but it's also, they are unlikely that first round pick that they just traded away, at least for next year, is likely to be it's essentially like right at the tail end of the first round.
Okay.
And again, if they, if again, Sauce continues to help them be a good team, the pick they traded it for 2027 will also be at the tail end of the first round. So these are not under most expectations, these are not high first round picks. I don't know how much.
I mean, the other thing you have to look at
it matters.
I mean, Sauce Gardner's a genuine superstar. He's a first he's in 3 seasons. He's been twice Pro Bowl first team cornerback. I mean, this is a difference making.
And Williams, their defensive tackle that they just traded, is the same thing. He was an all pro and Pro Bowl.
In expectation, a first round draft pick is fine, but in probability of being a superstar, I don't see it.
Well, I guess they're paying the extra first rounder because they're basically getting a kind of a realized first round talent as opposed to the expectation of one in Sauce Gardner, a realized one. And they're paying an extra first rounder for that realization as opposed to the expectation of it.
Well, Gardner's position was what? What was he in the first round? Do any guys remember?
He was like mid, wasn't he?
First round. He was pretty. Was he the first cornerback taken? I think he might have been the first corner.
He might have been, but I don't know if he was top 10 or anything like that.
I hear you. I agree with that. Yeah. It goes to these questions of roster construction. And it always goes back to one issue that's essentially immeasurable in the NFL, and that is, are there externalities? Are guys worth more because they make other guys better, and how can we value that? And we have a sense that that's true for some positions in particular, but it's really hard to put a number on it.
I did. Speaking of putting a number on it, I was reading a little bit about cornerback valuation, and I gather the way they value them is how many snaps are there before there's a successful completion. So they get credit when the people they're guarding are not targeted. I thought that was clever. You don't see that all the time.
We used to get that wrong, right?
It's like a waiting time instead of a cumulative measure or something like that. That's fun.
People aren't throwing out. And that's a nice way to get at, is it survival? Is it a survival curve?
Right. And Sauce Gardner's excellent, right? So he doesn't have many interceptions, but that's because nobody throws at the person he's covering.
It's spectacular. And then what it doesn't capture, Odd, is that if he can do that when he's manned up one-on-one, that frees up some of the defensive backs to go pay more attention to the other guys. So that's underestimating the impact, right? Because he's having a positive impact on his teammates as well. Really good. Really, really good.
And I think it does say that, just on the kind of Colts side, it does see it's a further indication they really believe that this Indiana Jones thing is legit, and that's just kind of who because they basically they're trading away their ability to get a new quarterback essentially for the next 2 or 3 years, at least via the usual.
That's true. So it's not even just this season. They're going in on this guy because they're not going to end up with another. That's interesting. Remind me what their division's like. Is part of their deal this year that they don't have anybody, like they come out of a weak division, right? I mean, we know Tennessee's.
Well, the Jaguars are, I think the Jaguars actually have a pretty decent record, whether you again believe that or not. We're I've always been hesitant to say too much consequential about the south of either of the two conferences, right? Aren't those usually like chaos divisions? But yeah, I mean, the Jaguars are just a game behind them, basically, or a loss behind them. They're 5-3. And that's, the Texans are one of the worst teams in football, and not the Texans, the Titans, and then the Texans.
Texans are not bad,
record, but are not a good team.
If I'm just looking at the standings, Jaguars are a negative point differential, which means if anything, they've overperformed.
Oh yeah,
Texans are actually quite good and have thoroughly underperformed, at least by score differential. They're plus 47, yet they're 3-5. So I think, at some level, Indianapolis doesn't have too much in their division that they're that worried about.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna lose out on the number 1 seed to the Patriots, obviously, but I mean that we're
Yeah.
getting ahead of ourselves here.
Shane is back.
Yeah, he is back, and we're going to ignore it as much as possible. I am literally averting my eyes from the Patriots. I just can't yet accept that the Patriots are back, and I'm not going.
You're not ready for that Kansas City, New England AFC Championship game?
No, and thank
How
God.
important would that be?
I mean, thank God the Bills took the Chiefs down a notch on Sunday. That's good. But also just on the division race, one thing that I realized kind of belatedly as the Ravens run off a couple of wins, if you're pulling for the Ravens to do well this year, all you got to do is get them to the playoffs, and all you got to do for them to get to the playoffs is for them to win their division. Like that's one of the nice things about the NFL structure.
Mhm.
It's weird in some ways because lame divisions can produce lame playoff contenders, but in this case, great. But now they got to beat the Steelers, so they've got the weak Bengals and the weaker Browns. And the middling Steelers that somehow always finish over 500, and Aaron Rodgers, damn him, is having at least a reasonable season. But that's kind of the thing now: is can we get the Ravens over the Steelers? That's like the race for the second half of the season is can we?
I mean, the Steelers are locked into 9-8, so that's really the target, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think the market buys your story, Cade, because I mean, I feel like even at their nadir, I don't think the Ravens stop being like the favorite to win that division. And certainly now that they've rattled, Lamar's back and everything, they got to be.
And they made a
that's
trade.
only
They made a trade. They gave away a 5th round pick or something, conditional, maybe a 4th, to get a pass rusher in there. So they're active. And hell, I don't know. The day's not over. We haven't hit the trade deadline yet. Is this a different world though? Right? This is the way baseball is. Football used to not be like this.
Well, and again, I think it just actually passed like literally a half hour ago. I think so. I think we are past the trade deadline.
Okay.
But I agree, Kate. I wanted to kind of note this if you didn't, that I feel like, I mean, basically what the Jets did, I think is unusual.
Yeah.
Like you don't usually see NFL teams kind of fire sailing. I mean, this was a very baseball move where they just kind of like recognized they were out of it and fire sailed their team. And I think that's kind of unique. Maybe you don't usually have bad, really, obviously, 1 in 7 teams that still have elite talent worth trading or something. I don't know. Maybe they had the unique potential to fire sale more than most teams, but I still think their behavior today is unusual relative to what most trade deadlines happen at.
Mhm.
And they learn from baseball. This is learning across sports. This is I don't know if analytics going to get blamed or credited for this. I don't know. It's just learning. It's just plain old learning. Guys, I'll give you one caught my eye. A conversation I had with an NHL team in the last couple of weeks, that a concept I hadn't thought about before. I think y'all will be curious about it. How difficult do you think it is for these front offices, say a sport like the NHL, which is relatively late to the analytics game? Okay, so they're not advanced as the MLB, and certainly not MLB. Probably the least advanced of the 4 leagues in the major American sports.
Mhm.
If you're front office of the NHL, what are the chances they know how to hire good analysts? And so the hypothesis that this person put out there was that you can't really judge how good, how sharp, how analytics forward a team is by how many analysts they have, because essentially the quality of the analysts vary dramatically because the people hiring them aren't analysts, and they don't know whether they have someone good or not. And that's an intriguing idea, and I hadn't considered it before.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of thought, again, I mostly thought about this in the context of baseball because, not to pick again on the Yankees, but they have like, I think one of the second or third largest like analytics department. They seem to invest a large amount of kind of attention and money and all that stuff into analytics. They seem to just do it wrong though, or something. I mean, like I'm not on the inside, so I don't know.
Money was I don't want
based
to.
on outcome, they're doing it kind of wrong.
Well, more than
And
that,
so it's sort of like that's just one example of something where it's like, you throw a bunch of money at something, it won't necessarily improve it unless you actually have some vision there. And again, that's only the one example I can think of.
Adi, I remember getting a text from Adi at a conference not so long ago reporting about firsthand conversations with the members of some team that will go unnamed. And he wasn't depending on season-long outcomes. He was talking about the process of the inputs, and it wasn't favorable.
Well, it's amazing because you do recognize that there's enormous variability in the actual analysts themselves. I think the Dodgers spend the most. I mean, they just seem to be crazy, and I think now that Ryan's not working for the Utah Jazz, the Dodgers hired him and they said, "Here's some money, just do whatever you like."
They've got an entire rabid baseball country as their farm system.
Yeah, I mean, they just were like, they just invested in just trying to squeeze out and just throw the cast the net wide, and you're going to get some great stuff, just guaranteed, right? And I do think the process.
But hold on, they chose Ryan. They didn't. That was a good choice based on our understanding of Ryan relative to talent in the world. They could have thrown that money at poor choice as well.
And I have to say, so Sam Andre Cohen is now he's with the Marlins, and the Marlins had a really unexpectedly good season last year, and the first thing that Sam did is he hired someone, a PhD out of Florida, excellent. Told him, "You're running the analytics department." In other words, he didn't try to, when he was with the Nationals, he was out there doing his own hiring, and he confessed to me, "I'm not an analyst. I'm happy using it, but I can't judge this person from that person." And the first thing he did was get someone that he could trust, and he's excellent. His name is Brian. To really run the analytics show.
I just think,
and he would call me up, and Sam would say, "I don't want to. I'm only interested in talking to your number ones. I'm not interested in 2, 3, 4, and 5." And I'd sometimes say, "But our 2, 3, 4, and 5s are excellent."
Yeah. This is a really interesting idea, and it's a source of variation that I hadn't considered before. And apparently it explains some variation in the NHL. By the way, this person he said hands down, I trust this person's judgment, hands down, the sharpest, most analytics forward team in the NHL is the Hurricanes. So it's kind of them, and then it's like everybody else kind of thing. So just for what it's worth. Okay, fellas, that was a quick. Do we want to do quick ones? I know we've spent our time, but we haven't covered very much territory. Real quick, like 30 seconds to 60 seconds. One more round of what caught your eye. Shane Jensen.
Joe Flacco passing for 448 yards, the most ever by a player in his 40s. Obviously, breaking Tom Brady record from a few years ago. 448 yards in a loss.
Joe, go old man. Adi Wyner.
Am I up? I watched the entirety of the Chiefs-Bills. And those two quarterbacks are unbelievable.
Yeah, they are. They are. And there's a
God
in heaven. There's a God in heaven that Casey did not win that game again. Mine will be, did y'all know there's a site where you can find the most expensive college football tickets of a weekend? And it's just a way of looking at, man, our buddy, our frequent listener, Yuval Rotenstrike, he really ought to get assistant producer credit. He's been giving us so many good ideas over the years. He texts me some weekends like, who thinks most expensive this weekend? This weekend. Y'all don't know these things, but Texas Tech BYU, a Big 12 game, is the most expensive ticket in the country. It's a noon game, which means it's an 11 game in Lubbock. And this is going to be one of the bigger games in the Big 12. Well,
how much?
408 or something like that, which is a big ticket in Lubbock, Texas. But these teams are both going to be, by the way, college football's first playoff, 12 are going to come out right now, like in a few hours. Doesn't mean anything, but it's the first official one of the season. Both Tech and BYU are going to be in the top 12. But the amazing thing about this is BYU is undefeated. They're going to be probably above Tech in the ratings. They are 10-point underdogs going into Lubbock to play Texas Tech. It's just absurd. These are like the best two teams in the Big 12, and it's a 10-point spread. Really, really odd. But that's a big game, a fun game, an early game on Saturday to keep your eyes on. All right, guys, let's wrap it there then. Good fun. Always good to visit. Tuesday afternoon here. The show will go up on Wednesday. Thank you for listening. Thank you to the whole team here. Marissa Reyna, our producer. Deion Simpkins, our everything, our Uber everything. And Dee Patel, the big boss lady. Eric Bradlow in absentia for Adi Wyner, for Shane Jensen. This has been Cade Massey for our friend Dean Oliver, guest in the first half of the show. Thank you guys for listening. Come back and join us next time. Between now and then, enjoy your sports.